The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
This is one of my true favorite people. She is one of the people who has emerged as an early investigator into answering the musical question, who is Barack Obama? Her name is Linda Jordan. Ms. Jordan, good morning and welcome back to Denver. Welcome back to 710 KNUS.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no, it's the question that never leaves the show. And who is Barack Obama? Let me set the stage. It's now been over 7 years for me. And people came to me and said, did you ever notice the discrepancies in the official story of Barack Obama's life and the truth or the missing truth? And at that time, he had just been here. He had gotten the nomination to be the Democratic candidate, and most people gave him a little clean shot to win because of George Bush. And damned if the guy doesn't win. But then it really begins from there. And that begins what I have been called a birther, the birther movement. I proudly say I'm a birther. I have no idea who Barack Obama is. So a little bit about yourself first, and then how you came to ask those questions as well.
Well, I'm a housewife. I'm out of Seattle, Washington, and I had no idea who Obama was either. And kind of started paying attention when he announced that he was going to run for president, of course, and it just struck me as very strange that this fellow had written a book about himself, which I did make myself read, and there seemed to be nothing in it. He had accomplished nothing, but he was really puffing himself up, so I didn't trust that. Started investigating, saw his connection with Bill Ayers, the unrepentant domestic terrorist, and the fact that he denied that he had any relationship with the fellow, which was easy to prove that he did. So that confirmed to me that he was a liar, and things just went from bad to worse after that, and I just kind of have never quit researching him since then.
I am sure, like myself, you get asked all the time, why do we do this? And who do you think the man is? So, Linda, why do you do it? And can you really try and tell Barack Obama's true life story?
Well, I can't. I can tell his purported life story. His true life story, I don't know, because he lies about everything. And it's hard to get to the truth of something when you're dealing with someone who lies like he does, and when you're also denied access to the real record, which we have been over and over and over again. And, it is a mad world when someone with fake ID can gain access to the White House, and become president of the United States. It makes you feel crazy because it's so obvious. We're not dealing with a major conspiracy here. This is not the grassy knoll. There is no smoking gun to find. There is a blatantly fake, forged birth certificate on the White House website that he claims to be his, and it's a forgery. It's an abject forgery, and
Absolutely.
It's easy to prove.
Yeah.
We just simply need to find, I know people get discouraged. I do myself. But the evidence is right there. We just simply need to find someone charged with upholding the law who has the courage to do it, even when someone like Barack Obama is violating the law.
Yeah. So why this all kicks up again is I have he's a friend, former colleague, does a radio show on 850 KOA by a guy named Mike Rosen. And Mike writes a column for the Denver Post. On the 29th of March, Mike had a column appeared called Tiptoeing Around Extreme Islamic Extremism, for which he was immediately attacked once, of all crazy things, by the ADL, which say to yourself, dude, if these boys get what they want, as a Jewish guy, where do you think you stand? But number two, this guy, and Mike talks about, and he says in the column about Obama, about and George Bush, the Islam, the religion of peace, and how what Rosen did was stereotype Muslims, and the beat goes on. But this one guy writes a letter. His name is Keith Ruckhouse. Ruckhouse says, Rosen claims he understands President Obama's religious motivations better than the president does. Even if Rosen's clairvoyance was accurate, Obama's baptism definitely settles it. He's a Christian. One is simply not going to find a Muslim who will affirm Obama as a Muslim knowing that he was baptized. So I started off, the guy's letter kind of was arrogant, and we know Obama living as a childhood and the rest of that stuff. So I started to chase this, Linda. I've talked to half a dozen people and they come down to the conclusion, what baptism there, and once again, you're not shocked, but there is no paperwork that would say the guy was baptized. But what we did find was his 2007, and this goes into what you say, these are called slicks. It was a mailer, very slick paper, came out in 2007, and it's on our website right now, 710knus.com. It's called Committed Christian. There's a picture of Barack Obama standing in a pulpit with a big pipe organ. Have you ever seen this picture before? I mean,
no.
All right. Go to, when you get a minute, when you're done with the show, 710knus.com. And he's standing in a church, apparently in Selma, Alabama. And there's a big pipe organ on the wall. He's at a pulpit. He has a Christian cross on this purple drape. Then there's a picture of him. It looks like he's leading a prayer service. You can see a stained glass window to his left. There's a picture of him in the left corner where he is praying, head down, holding hands with another man, and they're praying. And it says, "Committed Christian, Barack Obama." Well, so when you start to talk to people, I think you know Ed Klein. I know Ed Klein pretty well. Klein got that interview with Jeremiah Wright, and this is all on tape, and Wright says Obama came to him and said, "I need some spiritual advice. I don't know who I am." Wright said, "We all know your Islam background, but what you need is some coaching on Christianity." So they asked him, "Well, did you," and I guess asking Reverend Wright, "Did you convert him from being a Muslim to being a Christian?" To which Reverend Wright said, "Well, I wouldn't go that far." And another researcher, somebody else, I think Andy Martin, who's in Hawaii right now, or he's finishing a book, Martin said he asked about Obama's baptism, and he even went to the church, and he said he was never able to obtain any evidence that he was baptized. But they've asked for records, but you're not shocked that there's no paperwork.
Right.
And then last but not least, Kathleen Falsani, who's a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times, writes, Obama, described his conversion experience now in his mid-20s when he walked down the aisle at Trinity. Can you find anything about, because I don't think he ever went to church he went to mosque, we know that, but did he go to church?
You know what? I haven't researched that specific area as much, but my only initial reaction is that Obama will use anything to further his agenda about his life and his future, and that would include using Christianity and using the church.
Sure.
If he felt that would make other people look at him favorably, it sounds like he would do that to me.
Oh, so what?
And I'm not aware. You've done some good research, and it sounds like some other people have, and they're coming up with dead ends here and there and everywhere, and with no paperwork, nothing to confirm. So it just fits perfectly with his fabricated life.
I made a joke this morning. I predicted this joke. As you know, now this movement is you can't call her Hillary, it's sexist. And I said, because I predicted long ago that the moment Hillary Clinton throws her hat in the ring, that 75 or 80 million racists overnight will become sexist. And you can see that happening already. So what is the guy's life story? And who is his father? And is he a Muslim? Or, there's always that list of what we don't have. Occidental College, Columbia College, Columbia thesis, Harvard, Selective service, medical records. You get on a list of things that are all locked away and suppressed. So my question to you is why? Why are these things suppressed?
Well, you suppress things, you hide things when there's something to hide, and something that's a pretty big deal. I have been convinced that he's not a citizen of this country. And
why? Why would you say that? But why would you say
this? When I read things about his mother, if she is indeed his mother, because we really know nothing, but if Stanley Ann Dunham is his mother, she really did not like America very much. She was the kind of woman that, in my mind, would kind of think it was cool to have a kid who was born in another country or who was a citizen of another country, who was not an American citizen. In that time period, the late 60s, early 70s, early 60s, it was, it was cool, radical. And she was very much attracted to that way of thinking, and was not a friend to our country at all. So she somehow she has Obama, and she takes him at a young age, we know, to Indonesia. We think that he was adopted by her second. You don't know if it's her second or first husband.
Well,
we have no idea.
She didn't marry the first one. There's no evidence.
Okay, so by Lolo Soetoro, and we know the very few things that we know. Maybe we have 10 documents of his life, and we do know that he was registered as an Indonesian citizen on his elementary school papers in Indonesia, and that his faith was listed as Muslim. So why are we not supposed to believe that?
Well, but that doesn't play out in the narrative. I mean, there's no question, and this is the great paperwork. This is paperwork you can see. January 68. The president is registered as a Muslim in the Assisi primary school under the name of Barry Soetoro.
Right.
Now, he's listed as an Indonesian citizen whose stepfather, listed on the school documents, as L. Soetoro Ma, M.A. He was working for the Indonesian Army. So after attending the Assisi, he was enrolled also as a Muslim, according to the documents, in the Besuki, B-E-S-U-K-I primary school, a public in Jakarta. Now there's a thing called the Lao Tse, L-O-A-T-Z, and it's run by this American expatriate who's in Southeast Asia who visited that school. And he noted, all Indonesian students are required to study religion at the school, and young Barry Soetoro, being a Muslim, would have been required to study Islam daily in the school. He would have been taught to read and write Arabic, to recite his prayers, and to read and recite from the Quran and to study Quranic law. Now,
right.
We know that.
Yes, that's what we do know. Yes. And I believe it, and I see it played out in his actions today.
Why?
So, and why wouldn't that have an impact on a young boy, and help to shape him, mold him?
And we know that for whatever reasons, his mom no longer wanted him there. Maybe that's when she was pregnant with his stepsister, but she sends him by himself back to Toot and Gramps. Toot and Gramps didn't go to church. And not going to church doesn't make you a bad person, but they didn't go to church. And then he falls then under the spell, if you would, of Frank Marshall Davis, who's an avowed atheist. He's a communist. So where does this church stuff begin? Well, as near as I can figure, it appears at the Trinity United Church in Chicago.
Right, and that's when he was running for senator. That's as near as I can tell. He all of a sudden kind of got religion. That's when he also decided to change his autobiography on his publicist's website to say that he was also raised in Chicago.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. He was, and when he decided to say he was raised in Chicago, he didn't move there until he was 26 years old.
But here's the weird thing. He has connections in California, connections in New York, connections in Massachusetts, connections in Hawaii. There's no connection in Hawaii or Chicago except for one thing: Frank Marshall Davis. Frank Marshall Davis, born and raised in Chicago, moves to Hawaii. I think there's a shot that he may be the biological father of the president. I don't know that. But of all the places to go in the world, why go to Chicago? What's in it? What's a great line? What's in it for me to go to Chicago? And no one even knows what he did when he organized the community, do they?
No. I think we have one picture of him at a blackboard writing something down on the blackboard. But there's not much to go on there. I mean, when you look at Ted Cruz, who is a Harvard graduate, who also was editor of Harvard Law Review, who also is a lawyer. You can find
see it all.
Unlimited number of briefs that he's written. He's argued in front of the Supreme Court how many times? I mean, it was extremely high number. I can't remember right now. You can find nothing that Obama has written, nothing. As a lawyer, as a Harvard Law editor, nothing. So it's a stark contrast between the two. I would say that they're both illegal and do not qualify to be president because they're not natural-born citizens. But when you compare their
availability,
it's night and day difference.
Sure.
And how's it that we can see all of the stuff about Ted Cruz, but we see nothing? I mean,
nothing.
How much evidence do we need that this guy is a charlatan? He's a fake, he's a phony, he's a fraud, and he's using fake ID.
This life, this autobiographical life, is a series of, or little more than, PR stunts. That's what I've come to believe. Do you believe that as well?
Yes, absolutely.
They have very little to do with the actual events in his life. Is that fair?
Yes.
We know less about this man than any other president in American history.
Yes.
In a modern time of transparency and computer access, and they have spent enormous amounts of money, no one's sure of the actual dollar amount, to hide his record. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And we're suffering, our country is suffering, individuals in this country are suffering from what he's done. When I'm thinking right now about the latest crisis, the immigration crisis that we're facing, when Barack Obama talks about these illegal immigrants as dreamers and encourages them to violate our laws to enter our country, in my mind, that's the dream that he's referring to is the dream of pretending you are a citizen of this country in order to reap the benefits of citizenship, which is exactly what he's been doing for years, for decades. And he doesn't see the wrong in it because he has done it for so long himself. And that's a major problem when you have someone who's a liar and who violates the laws and has no conscience about it. When that person is leading our country, I mean, anarchy, really. That's what I feel like we're living in the middle of this storm. And people don't see it yet, but I certainly feel it.
Linda Jordan is with us on Barack Obama's life. I'm close to a pause. I'm going to set you up with a question. Please answer it on the other side. Will the time come? Will there ever be an accounting? Will the time come when something like the New York Times, or I don't expect it to happen, the NBC Nightly News, and someone says, oh, by the way, while we're at it, this guy, and I believe this. I believe that the Clintons, and they're coming back, they grifted the country. Bill and Hillary Clinton are grifters. Barack Obama ran the long con, as they say in the street. This is a con. This is a legitimate con. The Clintons are just grifters. You say just grifters, but they're grifters.
Right.
This guy's a con. Tell me what you think on the other side of this. I'm a big fan. Linda Jordan is with us, 710 KNUS. One of my true favorites, and she has been a stalwart in the fight. Her name is Linda Jordan. On Barack Obama and his, we talked about his religious beliefs, and like so many other things, I think he's extremely pragmatic. Whatever suits him, he will wear or say at the time. Having said that, will that moment come, Linda, where we are no longer the rotten human beings that we are, but in fact, we knew the truth all along?
I do believe it will come. I mean, think of people in popular culture who just look like they're getting away with everything, and then they finally fall. And I think that will happen with Barack Obama. I can kind of feel it gaining momentum, people who are speaking out against the things that he's doing. I know it feels like we're all alone, but we're not the only people standing in line He's committed a lot of violations against our country and other individuals. IRS, Benghazi, executive orders, illegal immigration, Obamacare. So we may have been the first in line, but we are not the only people in line, and that line is growing. So I think we will finally get to the truth. And I'm working on my final installment on the Loretta Fuddy death, which is directly, I believe, tied to Barack Obama's forged birth certificate somehow. And you know, the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, has not released the cause of the crash, but through an FAA report, I do know the source of the cause of the crash and have been reviewing it with some engine experts. And there's some very shocking details in this FAA report that I'm going to be going over and explaining to people in my latest report on Loretta Fuddy's death.
What do you think? I'm using words think and believe, not know. What do you think his life story is?
Well, I think he was probably born to an unwed mother. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was Stanley Ann Dunham. I think that he was not really wanted by anyone in particular, which is sad, but not sad enough for me to let him do what he's doing to our country. He was kind of handed off from one person to the next, and he was really steeped in a culture of anti-Americanism, I think the Muslim faith, and he developed some very deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. He developed an ability to lie without conscience in order to prop up his overinflated ego, which inadequacies tend to create. And he has just combined that with, to me, a very, very lazy nature. He has just lied himself through his life, and because of his color, has been able to do it a lot easier than someone who had no color. And so he's kind of just used that as a stepping stone to get where he wants, to get something for nothing, to be someone who he isn't, and he's done it very successfully. So I wouldn't say that takes smarts. I guess it takes some kind of chutzpah. I wouldn't call it courage, but he's managed to do that his whole life. But it will come crashing down, I'm convinced.
How many people in the circle do you think actually, because the truth in this guy's life are, they're not even in the same universe, but do you think that Michelle knows? Do you think that Rahm Emanuel knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No. They all know. I think There's very few. Maybe there's a few white radical leftist women who are just gaga and just think he's exactly who he says he is. But they're a hopeless case. But no, the people all around him know absolutely that he's not who he says he is.
I had a meeting, this goes back now 5 years, and with a very significant person who said to me, everybody knows the story's not straight. Everybody. And this is if I said his name, you'd know it. Washington, D.C. And it's not Tom Tancredo, for all you continuing emailers and texters. It wasn't Tom, although Tom firmly believes what I believe. But it was someone else. And then recently, another very powerful person said to me in a private conversation, Peter, I'm starting to believe that what you believe about Barack Obama is true. Now, I was stunned by this person saying it.
And why is he starting to believe that? Did he say why?
I think that there's no answer now, other when they scream at you and I and so many others, we're racist, we're bigots, we're this, we're that, we're hate speakers, all the politically correct charges, but they can't answer the questions. And I think But there are people that are really very bright, and they wanted to deny this in the early on because, like you point out, they were in love with the guy. But I think the 042 Social Security number, and the president frequently or does use this 042, and it was issued in Connecticut. And there's no record of Obama ever living or working in Connecticut. Indeed, I think in the first period of his life, 15, 16 years of age, and he's dishing ice cream at Baskin-Robbins. I believe he had an SSN at that time that was a set-aside, that people who claim to be foreign nationals get, and I think that somehow, and again, I'm using words like think and believe, they would not hold up in a courtroom. But he has that 042. And the 042, even something as ridiculous as this really exclusive private school that he attended.
Right.
And who paid for that? Because it was expensive, and Toot and Gramps weren't wealthy people.
Right.
But he goes to this school, and it's called Punahou, I think. And those applications to that school that would likely contain a birth certificate, by the way, are missing. The Occidental College records are important. They may show he attended as a foreign exchange student. Again, he used his Indonesian name, Barry Soetoro, when attending Occidental, and no one can see any. So when he arrives at Occidental and he's driving a Mustang, I mean, the people say, hey, that's a private school. It's not a gift.
Right.
And he didn't have great grades. He wasn't there on a ride, as they say. So he's driving a Mustang, smoking a lot of weed, maybe snorting coke. And I did all those things, by the way, so I'm not throwing rocks at him. But what? I mean, the Occidental College records are important. They may show he attended there proclaiming himself to be a foreign exchange student.
Absolutely.
Linda, did you buy that?
Well, I ran his Social Security number through E-Verify, and it came back flagged for fraud.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
So that's been established that it's not his Social Security number. It's a phony Social Security number that he purloined somehow. And it's also, interesting to note that he lied on his application to the bar. I researched that, downloaded his application, but it's on the website in Illinois, and he said that he has never gone by any other name. And you have to attest to that. You have to swear to it. And it doesn't say any other legal name. It says any other name, and we all know that he went by Barry at least through the first couple years of college.
Yeah, he becomes Barack after that. That's right. There's an interesting woman, again, these great people, Debbie Schussel, who took on the SSN, the Selective Service Number. And her theory, we can maybe speak to her anytime we want, but that he never registered for the draft because as a foreign national he didn't have to. So then he gets involved in politics in Illinois, and they say, you know what, you have all these missing things, so you had to register for the draft. You must. So they discovered this Selective Service card may have also been, as we say, doctored. The law requires young men to register for Selective Service. And Debbie discovered that evidence that Selective Service registration form was submitted not when he was younger as required, but whether in 2008, and then they altered it to make it look older. I believe. I don't know that, but you look at all this stuff, the evidence, and you believe it.
Well, yes. I mean, that's how juries are convinced that a crime has been committed. You present them with the evidence. What's happening with Barack Obama is that we have never been allowed to present the evidence in a court of law. And we've never been allowed to present our experts who have said, yes, he's using a forged birth certificate, and this is not his Social Security number. So that's where we've been getting blocked. And, we just need to find at least one good judge who's willing to uphold the law. And at least allow us to present the evidence.
Well, we talked about Terry Lakin, and given this Bowe Bergdahl and Terry Lakin doing 6 months in Leavenworth. I mean, Bergdahl's not going to do any time, but compare and contrast how all Obama had to do was take that phony birth certificate that he releases in a very short amount of time after Terry's sentenced to Leavenworth, walking across the street and save a good man's life, and he chose not to do that. But
Yes.
but again, if you go back to maybe he was telling people, and again, I give these options. Did he tell people he was a Kenyan? Did he tell people he was Indonesian? And that exempted him from registration to the draft. But as he gets older and enters politics, he sees that any of these documents will reveal this foreign birth, a selective service, registration, birth certificate, school apps, and they're going to be a huge problem. So is it a coincidence that every document that contains information about his birth or citizenship, missing, sealed, has been altered?
No, it's deliberate.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I quit beating my head off the wall when we talk about this, because I think only now the only people left standing that don't see holes in this man's story are either fools or true believers.
Mm-hmm.
Or
benefactors.
True. Or unable to admit that. I mean, because someone said, think of the apocalypse if it turns out to be all of this is fraudulent. I don't know.
You know, they say that, but is that what it really is?
No.
You right or wrong?
No.
You right or wrong, does all hell break loose? No.
I mean, we saw...
That's not what happened.
In my lifetime, we saw Richard Nixon resign.
Yes. Honorable, and for far, far, far less.
Well, Nixon didn't have a choice. He was going to be impeached or resign. He chose to resign. But I don't know. So now there's this nationwide network of researchers like yourself sprung up to fill in the blanks. And the lawyers knock everybody down every chance they get. Nobody gets past the wall.
No. So far, no one has gotten past that. No. But we're still trying, and I think it's it's a valiant effort. Anyone who has a love of this country, of our Constitution, feels called to do it.
I tell you what, you talk about, and I know how much heat you've taken, but of all the things that I've ever been involved with in this business, the most adamant hatred that I've ever felt, including getting cartooned in the daily newspapers and letters to the editor calling me names and threats to sponsors and threats to get me off the air, is about asking the legitimate question.
Yes.
The mystery of Barack Obama, and that's all you had to do.
Well, and that really tells you that who's in power, a fascist kind of dictator, when you can't question who you can't question.
Well, I could do it. I mean, and continue to do it, but there was moments where I thought to myself, is this really? And I thought, well, yeah, you got to keep on. You can't back away from it, but I don't know.
And I understand that feeling of, not wanting to take the slings and arrows anymore and just being done with it. But, it encourages a lot of people, the fact that you have not backed down. And you know those people out there, when they say something that needs to be said, or they ask a question that needs to be asked, and then you just are praying, please don't back down, please don't change your mind, please don't recant. And most of them do. Well, you haven't. And that's very encouraging.
Take care of yourself. You're needed.
I will.
We'll talk again, but you're the best, Linda. Thanks, pal.
Thank you.
Linda Jordan on Obama's Life. All right, we go to open lines, 303-696-1971. In fact, you know less about Barack Obama's life than any other president in our history. Rutherford B. Hayes, Millard Fillmore. We know more about those two men than we know about this guy. And this is the age of transparency and computers and the information age.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.